What's up, everybody? My name is Jordan Farmer, and this is the Uncommon Ground Podcast, episode 5. And today I'm going to be breaking down healthcare and how we can fix it and make it so that it actually works for the people. First and foremost, we need to acknowledge that all healthcare consists of goods and services, one or the other. People that are offering services or goods that you're trying to buy, medicine, or combinations where it's a piece of technology offering a service like a X-ray or something like that. But it's all goods and services, which means the best system for providing cheap, high quality, and increasing quality over time and decreasing in price over time and generating more and more abundance over time. If that's your goal for healthcare, and obviously that's the goal for healthcare, then a free enterprise system is the best system to be in charge of. They're calling me to be in charge of our healthcare system in terms of generating the actual products and services, the production. You want to have that decentralized system. Now, healthcare is unlike every single other industry. So the point is, we have to admit it's an industry, goods and services, and a free enterprise system is the best system for generating that. But healthcare is unlike every single other industry in that if you lack access to that particular good or service that you need, it could kill you or seriously reduce your quality of life. If you don't get Jordans and you have to buy, Walmart brand $10 cheap crap shoes instead, because that's what you can afford, you're not materially that much worse off. I mean, you have an uglier shoe, but that's it. But if you lack healthcare, there's actual life on the line, human life on the line. And this is one of the unique areas in which the right wing tends to maybe undervalue life. Not that they're undervaluing life, but I just mean it's not expressed as often that healthcare and the concerns around healthcare are branching out of a value of human life and human quality of life. You got to understand that that's where it's coming from. Maybe the politicians want the power, but the people are coming from that fundamental good position, in my opinion, for the most part. But anyways, healthcare is unlike any other industry. So if we just sit back and fail to do anything, not just with charity, but also with our system. Now, we have 25 to 30% of GDP to spend on government stuff. There's room in it for some sort of a healthcare system. We already have a healthcare system in place, Medicare, Medicaid, Medi-Cal here in California. Like you have lots and lots of government intervention into the healthcare market already. And we don't have a free market system right now. But we need that free enterprise system. But because healthcare is unlike any other industry, we need some sort of an intervention. Now, the typical sort of framework that we're presented with when it comes to this, the healthcare discussion in politics right now is very focused on coverage and whether or not you get coverage, whether or not pre-existing conditions are covered. And there's something to that discussion, but in reality, we should be much more focused on cost and supply and access to healthcare goods and services as opposed to just coverage. So under the Affordable Care Act, premiums and what are they called? Deductibles went up quite a bit. I don't have the specific numbers, but they went up quite a bit. In some states it doubled, in some states it tripled, and in some states more than that even. Which means that it costs a lot more to get access to healthcare, so lots of people actually lost access to healthcare, even though other people maybe got more access to healthcare. And on balance, a lot more people have lost healthcare compared to before. But those people are predominantly middle class, and they're not necessarily the special interests that government politicians will actually listen to because they fund their campaigns, and they're also not the people that are poor that we have sort of automatic sympathy for. We have to understand that not everyone's creative and productive capacity is monetizable enough within the marketplace so that their labor outputs in a given week or in a given month or in a given year will be enough to cover both cost of living and their healthcare costs. Some people are just born with an incapacity to monetize their labor in the marketplace enough. So maybe in the future when we have a lot more money, and our economic system is leveled out again and made into a level playing field once again, so that laborers aren't being constantly screwed, then maybe we'll be rich enough so that everyone can afford healthcare. But right now we need an intervention because people lack access to healthcare right now, and because we'll have to have an intervention ongoing, because people will always have that fundamental lack of capacity to monetize their labor. We should encourage everyone to do it as much as they can, but it's not always going to make it to that level of covering all your costs of living, or costs of surviving. The natural marketplace would have highly competitive pricing. I mean, right now you go to a Mexican food restaurant, for example. I love Mexican food. All the prices are listed right there. You know what a quesadilla costs. You know what and there's not surprises. Maybe you're like, dang, the sales tax is it's a bit much. But besides that, like, you're not shocked. It didn't go from $10 to $500, and you're like, didn't see that coming. But with healthcare, that's not the way it works. With healthcare right now, you don't know what the prices are. You don't know until after the fact, and you're not even the one paying it immediately all the time. We actually pay corporations to pay other corporations to then offer us healthcare, and let them negotiate all the prices and all the profits and all that kind of stuff in the background. And it creates a very uncompetitive and disjointed marketplace, because the consumer and the price are now separated. So the decentralized network of consumers is no longer in play. That is probably the main reason why we have such expensive healthcare right now, but it's not the only reason. The system itself is designed to, the government has its tentacles in and around the healthcare system, and big pharma and big healthcare and big government have all gotten together and made it so that they profit very much, and that government officials and ex-government officials get the best healthcare possible. But everyday people and everyday Americans and the working class, and then when you consider the labor slash services side of healthcare, our education system for educating healthcare workers is totally screwed up from start to finish. We waste so much time, it's so expensive, and so many people don't make it through. We don't have enough healthcare. We're going to have an aging population. The baby boomers are getting older. They're going to need more healthcare workers. So we need to fix these systems very, very quickly. First and foremost, our higher education system with doctors. The problem doesn't even start with that, although I would be for maybe a $100,000 sort of flat payout to people that pass or graduate medical school or whatever. When you have a doctor, more often than not, they've been being pushed to, or a lawyer, or any sort of high profession, highfalutin profession, every single time they've probably been being pushed to be that from the time they were like 12 years old, or they were pushing to be that themselves since they were 12 years old. Once we fix our K through 12 system, we should have avenues so that the future doctors of the next generation can start becoming educated and being a doctor at 12 years old, and start getting involved in that, so that by the time they're 22, they're where they would have been in the current system at 32, instead of right now. It's just wastes so much time and money. So, and then same thing with nursing. Now, the specifics of how we clean up things like nursing and credentialing and all that kind of stuff, those are nuts and bolts issues. But fundamentally, the system right now keeps the supply of those laborers artificially scarce. And then one other way we can actually make healthcare services more abundant is by mandating, and you could do this at the state level, mandating that 10% of healthcare work has to be pro bono or free or charitable. And this would allow, or just force a lot of doctors to have to put hours in at free clinics so that free healthcare is given. And then those clinics can then determine who is viable, and you can come up with those nuts and bolts solutions. On the good side, we want to make sure that all of the production of healthcare goods and services is done within the country. Even if another company in a different country makes a better product, they can come to our country and build a manufacturing plant here and build it here, and we'll protect their privacy so they're not giving anything up in doing so. So there's no reason why we can't have pretty much just like absolute tariffs on all healthcare goods. But that's only if we open up competition within the goods marketplace. Right now, prices are really high because there's not a lot of competition. So you can't put the chicken before the horse, and I would not put up those tariffs until after we clean up the internal system. But trade does matter a lot too. If until we can get that more efficient system, opening it up so that we could buy cheaper drugs that are produced and sold in other countries, and just people can get them shipped here directly, you know, or however we can open that up, that will help a lot. Trump is doing something to that effect already through Medicare, but I don't know if it's universally applicable yet. However, even if it's not, if just Medicare or certain providers in the United States can get drugs for cheaper, and you open up those mechanisms, that will create a cheaper part of the supply, and so that the remaining supply relative to the remaining demand will actually go in the direction of bringing prices down. So it'll still work to bring prices down overall, but specifically I think his bill only applies to Medicare, but I might be wrong. But it's a very, very important tool. And to that point, all healthcare goods and services should be regulated under what I would call a Price Transparency Act, which means that if I charge, now if you charge like a fee to be a part of a hospital chain, maybe this is different because you can exclude people that aren't paying that fee. But even with that fee, and with all of your goods and services you provide at a hospital or a clinic or whatever, you should have one price for a pill of ibuprofen, one price for an x-ray, one price that's publicly available online so that people can shop and look ahead of time, one price for every single customer that comes through your store. Now, if you're like Kaiser, you pay $100 a month or whatever, then you're a member, then you pay it. Even then, the membership fee and that the fees after the fact have to be like flat and transparent for Kaiser people. So so the Price Transparency Act would be monumental in terms of changing the tide for healthcare goods and services. The final piece, and this is really cool because very rarely do people get this deep into policy and this deep into the means of production, and this deep into I don't even know what I'm saying at this point, but anyways, very rarely do people get this deep into policy. And so patents, we need to change our patent laws. The way the current system works for healthcare is that in a short period, when a company owns a new patent, they can be the exclusive providers for that drug, and that allows them to charge as much as they want, pretty much, for maximum profits for a short period of time. So it incentivizes a short-term, or it creates a short-term monopoly, and then long-term you get generic replacements so that there's these cheap alternatives that sort of outcompete them, and so there's not as much long-term profits. This model creates a lot of short-term innovation, and it has succeeded to a certain degree in tilting things in that direction, but it also incentivizes a lot of bogus drugs getting to market, and as much as you can do that, you'll make a lot of money with that artificial monopoly in the beginning, even if you end up killing 1,000 people you shouldn't have, and you pay out, you know, some of that profit in lawsuits. So what I would do instead is I would change the policy so that you get so that it's a permanent ownership of a patent. There's no generic alternatives or anything like that, but you get paid a retail or sales tax fee of 15 or 25%. I don't know what the percentage should be. I would go with 15%, but we can negotiate that another time. But the patents are very important. If you had it so that 15% of the sales of a particular good had to go to the owner of the patent, unless the owner of the patent owns 50%, 51% or more of a company, that would make it so that as soon as a product hits the market, the biggest producers can get involved and start producing. Or if the person wants to not get involved with those big companies when they come out with a patent, and this would also incentivize research and development companies by themselves so that they don't have to worry about the manufacturing side instead of it all being in-house, But anyways, instead of actually working with them and getting access to the biggest manufacturers from the jump and providing the most drugs, by having that 15% margin, they could get in the business themselves and have a healthy extra 15% advantage, but it caps it. It keeps it from being an absolute advantage because they can't sell and you can sell. Instead of you can sell slightly cheaper than they can, but if they can produce way cheaper than you can, then you're going to figure out some sort of ground in the middle or just compete. But it makes it so that the prices for all goods and services are cheap. It's all about whether or not you can manufacture them. And competitively sell them in the marketplace. That would open up things tremendously. So patent law. Very rarely do people get that deep into policy, and a reflection of this is a little side note, but very rarely do people consider the natural distribution of wealth as opposed to the redistribution of wealth. Most of the time people are concerned in talking about redistribution of wealth, but the way that the meritocratic free enterprise system dishes out wages and salaries is affected by government policies, namely trade, Federal Reserve policy, and Federal Reserve policy, and immigration. Because trade affects production, which is the demand for jobs, which creates jobs, which is the demand for labor, and immigration, which is increasing the domestic supply of labor, increasing the supply, decreasing the demand, and artificially inflating out the value of wages, all combined create quite a bit of damage to everyday laborers. So, yeah. Okay, so now actual policy propositions at the federal, state, and local level to try to provide the most effective version of that kind of intervention possible. First and foremost, at the federal level, I support a version of the universal basic income where 25% of that, so it's 12 grand. You don't start out with 12 grand, you start out with 3 grand, but of the 12 grand, 3 grand is leverageable income that you can take a loan off of and pay a fixed rate of interest, 5% in interest, and then 5% premium principal, or however we work it. It could just be 5% interest straight out. But anyways, a portion of that income, or the entire amount at the beginning, is leverageable income, but guaranteed income, which means that it's guaranteed to be paid off, so it's a guaranteed loan in a certain sense. So it's a guaranteed loan. So what that would do is that would allow people to get access to have supplemental income. So it's 3 grand a year, 250 bucks a month. That's 250 bucks a month for month-to-month expenses that you can have as an addition. Or if you want, if you need to, you can borrow a large sum of money with that leverageable income when you need it for a surgery or for a major accident or for when you miss a year of work or whatever it is. So that is the federal intervention. It still very much so operates as a decentralized system. So the money that gets pumped out, you can choose to spend, or you can choose to leverage, or you can choose to loan out. And it's all internal. So it operates as a decentralized system, and you can choose to give people money as a charitable donation, or you can choose to give people money at a lower interest rate than whatever the cap would be. But the standard cap I would do is 5%, because that's a competitive interest rate, but it's not so monumental that you're really robbing people that you're having take this loan. Anywho, so that would solve the federal level. At the state level, I would support a $2,500 a year universal health savings account stipend, so that people that are poor lack resources for healthcare. So the best way to solve that, in a certain sense, is to directly supplant their lack of resources and give them a universal health savings account. So that would be tremendous. And then at the local level, you could do one of two things. You can have a voucher system where the money that gets allotted to the healthcare system is just chopped up for every voter, and they get to send that money to a free clinic or something that's providing work. So this would be a way for some people to provide Planned Parenthood funding, and other people to provide pro-life prenatal care funding and adoption, or not adoption services, but anyways, be able to support healthcare clinics that are providing whatever they want to in their local community. Voucher system, or a debt or a voting-based debt forgiveness program. So here in Fresno, the federal budget is like $1 billion a year. sorry, the federal budget. The city budget in Fresno City is about $1 billion a year. And if you took 1% of that, or $10 million, and divided it down by like 10,000 people, you could give 10,000 people $1,000 towards their healthcare costs, or 1,000 people $10,000, or however it works. But anyways, you can have this debt forgiveness mechanism that's voting at the local level, and that would encourage local interactions between people and help develop the community.